is a territory in which we believe freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us. And that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking.
As I said, we all know the history, we all know where this is coming from, and the Anglophone population of Cameroon would very much like to be considered as first-class citizens, and there is a sense that they feel like, and they have felt a long time, like they're second-class citizens. It is up to dialogue and true dialogue to move this process forward. There's tremendous interest within all branches of the U.S. government towards this crisis. The United States is greatly concerned with what's going on in Cameroon. I mean, we consider Cameroon a long-term friend. We consider it essential for the stability in that region of Africa. As we all know, Cameroon has tremendous potential. It has phenomenal natural resources, has a highly educated, industrious, entrepreneurial population. It could easily rocket forward in progress and prosperity and stability. So because of that, the United States is greatly concerned with events there. And the frustrating thing is a lot of this was needless. As I said, we all know the history, we all know where this is coming from, and the Anglophone population of Cameroon would very much like to be considered as first-class citizens, and there is a sense that they feel like, and they have felt a long time, like they're second-class citizens. It is up to dialogue and true dialogue to move this process forward.
Good evening, this is Comrade Fonton Daniel. I will be speaking live here from the great state of Texas, here in the United States, on the question of who is or who was Sir Andrew Cohen. And this will bring us to the main topic of discussion in this evening. Who was Sir Andrew Cohen? So he is the person of interest in which we find the crisis in Southern Cameroon. And he is, or he was, British. And so he is the architect of the present demise of the Southern Cameroon territory. It was his judgment. It was his poor judgment in miscalculations that brought us into this present predicament in Southern Cameroon territory. So I want to take a moment to thank the United States for their continued support on the crisis in Southern Cameroon and the rest of other nations in and around the world. This is Comrade Funton Daniel. I will be speaking live here from the great state of Texas, here in the United States, on the question of Southern Cameroon. So I want to appreciate all fellow brothers and sisters here in the United States, those in South America, those in Europe, those in Asia, and wherever they are, citizens of Southern Cameroon territory. And I want to take a moment to thank the Ambazonia defense system that are fighting in ground zero. They're fighting for the common good, and this what make up the news for what I am going to be speaking this evening here in the great state of Texas on the questions who was Andrew Cohen. So, but before I proceed to that, I want us to take a moment and listen to the IG interim leader.
Institutions to come and draft, because without the tit-for-tat response by our independence forces to the Yaoundé bullies, they will never have had a voice on ground zero to identify as federalists in Cameroon. Their earlier versions of federalists of the SCNC and the consortium were either banished, killed, or are still languishing in jails for clamoring for a return to federation. So they should draft, at least for the freedom we have bought for them with our blood. We also recognize that the choice to project as a middle ground pacifist in Cameroon can just be a selfish calculation or a deliberate dishonesty. Show me anyone who is preaching federalism who will reject the outcome of a free and independent Southern Cameroon. Show me one. So if you will partake of independence, then you must pay your draft now in support of our genuine efforts to deny La Republique du Cameroun a military solution, knowing that if La Republique du Cameroun won through the military option, the status quo will continue unabated at the mercy of the winner. Permit me to ask everyone this question. Granted, you don't want your child to go swimming at the beach because for you it is immoral. If your child is pushed by an enemy from a bridge into the water and is struggling to swim, even though he has never learned to swim, and there's someone selling floaters by the beach and will catapult one of the floaters to your drowning child, if only you will pay for one, will you say swimming is immoral? I cannot pay for a floater because I don't sponsor swimming. That kind of reasoning is likened to that of some who claim they don't support war. These people forget that we are not fighting French Cameroon because we chose to fight. We did not declare this war upon ourselves. How can you deny the victim help to defend himself because you are against war when you have no power to stop the aggressor? That is not naivety. It is called complicity to resolve a political problem by letting the assailant kill his way to victory. When La Republique du Cameroun started killing us in 2017, were we at war with them? Why do you think if we stop fighting back, they will stop killing us? The children massacred in Gabo, Mautu, Kumba, Pinyin, Bali, Ekona, Bafut, the 30,000 innocent civilians and thousands of our political detainees in prison, were they fighting with La Republique before their demise? not helping our brave sons and daughters who have stood up to defend us is cruel, insensitive, and a gross betrayal. How can you, for some political calculation, be so heartless to let down the best among your children who brave the odds to stand up for your dear family? How dare you see them as terrorists? Listen to a preacher tell you this today. Jesus Christ, his disciples all carried swords with them. And Peter used his when they were attacked by the Sanhedrin. Without condemning Peter, Jesus did not ask Peter to throw away the sword, but rather he asked him to put it back in his shelf for another day. The reason being, his time had come to give himself up to die for mankind. You cannot be more Christian than Christ. Neither can you be a better follower than the disciples of Jesus Christ. I challenge you all today, whether Christian or Muslim, Africanist or moralist, to support this draft as a righteous duty we owe our dying people. This is so right in the sight of God. This year, every one of us should encourage a reluctant brother or sister to draft in his or her local government area and participate constructively during this crucial, critical time in our history. Let us remind them that those who defend their loved ones are the true heroes of their people. Let it be rehearsed in the Southern Cameroons Ambazonia this day, that one day all free riders in this revolution shall be publicly shamed, taxed double, and required to pay a levy to the government of Ambazonia before they can enter or settle in a free Ambazonia. Their double taxes and penalties will be used to pay ex-combatants of the same Ambazonia Restoration Forces they refused to support yesterday. So in Pidgin we say, if you no chop meat now, and you must drink the soup after, what's the difference? Do this little today, or do it for the rest of your life later. It's almost 4 years now since dictator Biya declared war on us from 2018. We responded timidly, hoping that reason will prevail. But Biya in disdain rapidly built a robust genocidal machine using money plundered from our resources to wipe us all from the face of the earth.
That was the IG interim president speaking on what all citizens of Ambazonia throughout the world must endeavor to do in order to eliminate and eradicate neighboring country, La Republique du Cameroun, from the Southern Cameroon territory. So now let's listen to La Republique du Cameroun President Paul Biya, and don't go away. It's going to be very interesting in this discussion today.
On avait la possibilité de les intégrer directement dans le système francophone, qui était celui de la majorité du peuple, 80%. Mais je crois que les pays sont soucieux aujourd'hui d'affirmer leur identité. Et c'est pour ça que nous mettons sur pied un statut spécial qui reconnaît la spécificité de la zone anglophone, mais elle reste dans l'intégrité territoriale du Cameroun. Ça donne beaucoup de problèmes.
Please, if you, we understand.
That brings us to the real discussion this evening in the question of Southern Cameroon. As you may have seen, I know all of us in the diaspora and the citizens of Southern Cameroon that are fighting to defend Southern Cameroon territory. But how did we came into these problems? It was this person of interest, Andrew Cohen, the British administering authority that was based in Nigeria. And that is the solely decisions that was made by Sir Andrew Cohen. At that time, he was the wrong person, making the wrong choice on behalf of the people of Southern Cameroon. And that is why today, at least 30,000 people of Southern Cameroon has been killed, and several of them living in Nigeria under La Republique, under the Nigerian managed authority. But however, thanks the Nigerians for providing the hospitality of the citizens of Southern Cameroon. And the neighboring country, La Republique du Cameroun, that has claimed that they have the ownership of Southern Cameroon, when in fact there is absolutely zero evidence that La Republique du Cameroun owned the Southern Cameroon territory. Let's look at, for those who are not aware, I usually bring this for a clear understanding. In fact, when the Allied forces defeated Germany, a United Nations was formed in 1945. The purpose of the United Nations was to maintain peace and security. Prior to the United Nations formation, there was the League of Nations. The League of Nations was dissolved, and the formation of the United Nations, which exists here today, which solely purpose was to maintain peace and security. So there were territories that were under the control of the Germans. So, but after the defeat of the Germans, those territories were now being given to under the members of the Allied forces to control till the further decisions are made. So, Southern Cameroon was part of the British colony following the United Nations decisions. But when the United Nations finally come to the realization that the territories that were under the colonial administering or the Allied forces be given their rightful independence, many nations in Africa got their independence because of that United Nations Resolution 1514 XV, that all those territories be given their rightful independence. La Republique du Cameroun is within that category of nations that fall within that resolution of the United Nations. Nigeria, for example, United Nations Resolution 133 granted the independence of La Republique du Cameroun in 1960. United Nations Resolution 160 granted the independence of Nigeria. And 1608 XV for the Southern Cameroon. Prior to the Resolution 133 for La Republique du Cameroun, Southern Cameroon wasn't part of the neighboring country, La Republique du Cameroun, where likewise in 1961, when Southern Cameroon, La Republique wasn't part of La Republique du Cameroun. So they are separate. And coming to the point where people call the separatists, there is a great distinction between a separatist. Who are we separating from when initially there was no any legal document that binds the people of Southern Cameroon and the neighboring country, La Republique du Cameroun? So for the confusion, many people always, including the United States, talking about the separatists. What is the definition of a separatist? Separatist is somebody that were part of a regional whole and that they choose to deviate, to leave and become a sovereign state. So if we have to classify in those ways separatists, then if Southern Cameroon, which there is no legal document that binds La Republique and the Southern Cameroon, therefore the Southern Cameroon doesn't fall in those categories of a separatist. But in the Resolution 133 of 1960, that recognized La Republique du Cameroun, which included Littoral, Western Province, Grand Nord, and the Center. Those regions were part of La Republique. So if the Western Province choose to leave La Republique du Cameroun, that is what is called a secession. They are seceding from the original entity of La Republique du Cameroun. Unlike in Southern Cameroon territory, if Northwest or Southwest as classified by the colonial, in Southern Cameroon, if Northwest is leaving, then that is secession within the Southern Cameroon territory. Because of the 1608, both were all together. So who is La Republique in Southern Cameroon? That is the obvious question that we keep on asking ourselves. Now, let's look at Andrew Cohen, the nightmare that created the confusion in which 30,000 people of Southern Cameroon has lost their lives. Andrew Cohen, there were three options. He is the father of the denier of the third options, because there were supposed to be three options. Do you choose to be an independent nation by joining the Federal Republic of Nigeria, or do you choose to be an independent nation joining La Republique du Cameroun? The third option that followed the people of Southern Cameroon to the present date, and if you have been following closely on the question of Southern Cameroon, then you may have identified one influential individual, Wabat Abed Mokom. Wabat Abed Mokom is a very influential, but is not well known. That is the person who wrote his book, Prisoner Without a Crime. Wabat Abed Mokom was the one that stood for the third options, and he has been hunted several times in prison by La Republique du Cameroun because he advocated for the third options. And that third option, that is what personally Andrew Cohen personally wiped out for the Southern Cameroon territory. In fact, the Equatorial Guinea population was not up to 1/10 of the population of Southern Cameroon at that particular moment. They were not up to a million population, but they got their independence without any schemes. Whereas the population of Southern Cameroon, Andrew Cohen argued that we were not ripe for a sovereign state, despite the fact that we had a government. We had a government that were more reformed, more popular, more democratic elected institution than the entire West Africa combined. La Republique du Cameroun at that particular time had zero government. Remember that the UPC that was formed, remember that the UPC that existed was supposed to be the leader of La Republique du Cameroun. They won the actual assembly with almost 29 seats, and that they should have formed a government. But you remember what France did. France disbanded it and turned those leaders of the UPC, they took a refuge, asylum. La Republique citizens took asylum in Southern Cameroon territory, looking for a place to stay. We approved their asylum document so that they can be able to reside in Southern Cameroon. Those were La Republique citizens, and yet we become a nightmare that we are now become depend on La Republique du Cameroun. And the person in this demise is Andrew Cohen. He forcefully believed that the people of Southern Cameroon cannot live independently. That was a wrong miscalculation and poor judgment on behalf of Sir Andrew Cohen. Let me look, just hold on. Andrew Cohen, he believed that we were not ready for an independence, despite the fact that we have an elected prime minister, Endeli, Jongo Foncha, and Joa, that were democratically elected, transfer of power, the first of its kind in entire West Africa combined, without any provocative or war or fighting. It was unanimous and merry-making. And we show an exemplary behavior in the entire West Africa combined to have that form of democratic institution. Yet, the world, Andrew Cohen, in his right mind, doesn't see we, the people of Southern Cameroon, was ready for a sovereign nations. Now, let's take a closer look.
Nation that
There's
you call
tremendous interest
yours,
within all branches of the U.S.
people can
government
do what has been
towards this
done
crisis.
to our children in West
The
Cameroon.
United States is greatly concerned.
I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which we believe in freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us. And that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us.
Now, welcome back to This is Comrade Fulton Daniel. Now, you all have been seeing the paper circulating by the Guardian Post in which a prominent professor of the Francophone extraction publicly declared that La Republique du Cameroun violated the terms of the Union of Southern Cameroon. La Republique du Cameroun violated the terms of the union with Southern Cameroon. In fact, there was never a union with La Republique du Cameroun. Let's look at back again on the circumstances. When you have somebody, let's say you travel or you happen to meet somebody, probably a female, and both of you happen to be living together, that does not necessarily mean that you are legally married. You can choose to be living together, and for some reason, one of the partners believe that they are legally married, and so therefore he can do whatever it takes and start controlling the other person just simply because they're living under one umbrella and become a dominant factor without disregard. So now, was there really a legal document between Southern Cameroon and the neighboring country, La Republique du Cameroun? Obviously, there is absolutely zero. There is absolutely zero document between the people of Southern Cameroon and the neighboring country, La Republique du Cameroun. You search on all the various archives. Now, let's look at the United Nations document. Paragraph 5 invites the administering authority, the government of the Southern Cameroons and the Republic of Cameroon to initiate an urgent discussion with a view to finalizing before October 1, 1961. And what do you think about October 1, 1961 was the day, the effective day of independence of Southern Cameroon. So there should be a discussion between the people of Southern Cameroon and the neighboring country, La Republique du Cameroun, with the final decision that should be finalized prior to October 1961. And 1961 was after the vote of the United Nations 1608, which effectively was to take place as October 1. So you have the 20th May, the 11th February, was a fraud initiated by La Republique du Cameroun to wipe the sovereign identity of Southern Cameroon and portray it to be the legal aspect of between the Southern Cameroon and La Republique du Cameroun, whereas there's none existed. Okay, he said it should be finalized before October 1, and this is one. The arrangement by which they agree and declare policies of the party concerned will be fully implemented. If you agree with me, then when did La Republique du Cameroun and Southern Cameroon ever come into urgent discussion per this paragraph 5 of the United Nations? None existed. So in fact, La Republique has no legal authority whatsoever to detain any citizen of Southern Cameroon. La Republique has no zero authority whatsoever to detain any citizen of Southern Cameroon in its territory. La Republique, if La Republique happen to arrest or detain any of our citizens, they need to be repatriated to Southern Cameroon and let the Southern Cameroon government initiate whatever he decides on that citizen. Whereas, if there were citizens of La Republique in Southern Cameroon will have to repatriate them to neighboring country, La Republique du Cameroun. So, if this was an urgent negotiation that should have taken place prior to October 1, in which never took place, so why is La Republique doing in Southern Cameroon? Just to satisfy the interest of France, that is a friendly nation to Great Britain. And that is why we are suffering our souls and being massacred. Now you see why the war of Southern Cameroon, war of independence, is necessary. Because of the injustice meted upon the people of Southern Cameroon with this foreign world. Because no one wants to state the truth. As you listen to the U.S. Undersecretary, former Undersecretary, we know the history. Let me bring the message again. Listen to him.
So, because of that, the United States is greatly concerned with events there. And the frustrating thing is, a lot of this was needless. As I said, we all know the history, we all know where this is coming from, and the Anglophone population of Cameroon would very much like to be considered as first-class citizens.
You listen, we all know the history, that it was a fraud. It was a fraud that initiated without the due process and forced the people of Southern Cameroon into a wedding that never took place in the first place. So if the United Nations is saying that the government, so if the United Nations is referring to a government, it means there was a government in Southern Cameroon territory. And so now, let's ask ourselves, where is that government and what happened to it? La Republique deliberately, with the complicity of France. You all remember former French president who says he cannot see an Anglophone become a president in reference to SDF chairman. cannot see an Anglophone become president of the Francophone territory. Now, then that brings us into the question that we can never be recognized, as you listen to the former U.S. Undersecretary for African Affairs. We all know the history. We all know the history. But we deliberately ignore the history, ignore the facts. But we want to forge ahead the wrong and the morally wrong on behalf of the people of Southern Cameroon. Now you see why the war against Ambazonia freedom is necessary. And that is why we are here in this war of freedom. The people of Southern Cameroon will never take this for granted.
That what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking.
J'ai ici avec moi la Constitution du 1er février 1961. Cette Constitution qui a instauré l'État fédéral au Cameroun. Cette Constitution dit à l'article 1er, et c'est très bref, la République fédérale du Cameroun est formée à compter du 1er octobre 1961 du territoire de la République du Cameroun, désormais appelé Cameroun oriental, et du territoire du Cameroun oriental, anciennement sous tutelle britannique, désormais appelé Cameroun occidental. Le 1er septembre 1961. Les deux Camerouns ont réalisé leur unité. On a eu un Cameroun oriental et un Cameroun occidental qui ont fédéré pour donner la République fédérale du Cameroun. Les deux Camerouns étaient unis. Et l'article 47 de cette constitution va sceller cette union en disant ceci, article 47, toute proposition de révision de la présente constitution portant atteinte à l'unité et à l'intégrité de la fédération est irrecevable. L'article 47. Donc ça veut dire que la forme fédérale de l'État du Cameroun ne devait jamais, je dis jamais, être remise en cause. En d'autres termes, le référendum du 20 mai 1972 était un référendum illégal, anticonstitutionnel. Ce référendum a violé la Constitution. Et je suis étonné qu'on choisisse le 20 mai comme un jour de fête de l'unité du Cameroun. L'unité du Cameroun s'est réalisée le 1er septembre 1961. 1972 doit plutôt nous rappeler la date où les francophones ont avalé les anglophones. La date où on a décidé d'accélérer la brimade des anglophones. Parce que jusque-là, le Cameroun anglophone avait un premier ministre qui était d'abord John Good Foncha, et quand Paul Biya a vu qu'il ne pouvait, quand Amadou Ahidjo a vu qu'il ne pouvait pas manipuler John Good Foncha, il a fait remplacer par Tandemuna. Parce que John Good Foncha était à l'époque vice-président de la République du Cameroun. Ahidjo a prétendu que les deux postes sont incompatibles. Il ne peut pas être vice-président de la République et premier ministre du Cameroun occidental. Il a fait remplacer par Tandemuna. Et en 1972, Tandemuna, on le met président de l'Assemblée nationale, qui passe de premier ministre du Cameroun occidental. Il aurait pu devenir vice-président du Cameroun. On le balance à un vulgaire poste de président de l'Assemblée nationale. Et à partir de là, les anglophones ont perdu toute autonomie. Toutes les institutions du pays anglophone ont été dissoutes. Et on en trouve, on voit les conséquences aujourd'hui. C'est une guerre civile dans ces régions-là pour reconquérir leur autonomie.
Now you listen to, for the Francophone that are speaking. Now let's listen to the military that are screaming now. But my question is, where were they when they were being assigned? In the military, they should be able to have a sense of judgment to think that the fact La Republique du Cameroun, and now and realize that after the massive slaughtering of them, you remember that the people of Southern Cameroon were being slaughtered by La Republique du Cameroun. The reverse is now the truth, because we turn the page and show La Republique that you own zero in Southern Cameroon territory. Now the military now realize, because they were being sent and they just walked like a sheep into Southern Cameroon territory and start killing like they were killing porcupine. But now the people of Southern Cameroon has began a new page and tell them enough is enough from La Republique du Cameroun. By the way, who is La Republique in Southern Cameroon territory? Because of the injustice that the world in which we think they were, the world we think they have a good sense of knowledge and skills to understand that what caused the Second World War was an injustice. And after learning that, we'll expect them to be clear, but yet they still continue to propagate injustice. Southern Cameroon should have been fully decolonized, and we would not have got 30,000 of our citizens when perished, while others have been languishing in the neighboring country, La Republique du Cameroon. Thus, La Republique has an authority to arrest and detain our citizens. So where is the government of Southern Cameroon? As you listen from the La Republique Francophone speaking, how they uprooted the government of Southern Cameroon. Fellow brothers and sisters, this is the moment we have been waiting before. And so we must rally our support to engage La Republique more than more than ever before. La Republique du Cameroon owns zero territory. They impose their colonial masters, colonial governors, colonial physicians, colonial every aspect of life, colonial division officer, because they are appointed by virtue of appointee. They are answering to the appointee, which is La Republique du Cameroon, rather than the people of Southern Cameroon elect their own people whom they have to govern, and they should have a choice to decide whether that person is capable to govern them. And there should be able a provision to eliminate when such individual become incapable. And that is why you have somebody 90 years doesn't remember his children's name, but he is the president of a country while ruling the youthful population. And this brings us to the French military. Now they start realizing. Let me play one of their own tone. Now they realize that the problem was a political issues. Where were they when they started massacring citizens of Southern Cameroon? They were glad of what they did.
J'ai l'honneur, mais je ne crois pas que c'est parce que, je ne vois pas que parce qu'on a signé j'ai l'honneur qu'on va risquer nos vies, on paie nos vies chaque jour comme si dans la vie militaire maintenant au Cameroun, ça n'atteint même pas la vie d'un poulet. Oui. Vous voyez comme le poste qu'on a caqué. Regarde comment les camarades sont boucanés, comme si quelqu'un était en train de boucaner la viande. C'est terrible. Au Nozo, chaque jour, les frappes, les militaires se couchent. On prend quelle mesure? On ne dit pas qu'on tue tout le monde avant qu'on réussisse la guerre. Mais comme nous on dit, c'est la crise, c'est la crise, c'est la crise. Bon, vous voyez qu'on met beaucoup de volonté. Mais ce qui est vrai est que le genre de crise-là, on ne peut pas finir ça par les armes. La guerre ne peut pas finir ça. Les militaires ne peuvent pas finir ça. Ça veut dire quoi? Ça, c'est le truc politique. Très, très politique. Il faut le dialogue. Nous, les militaires, on est quoi dedans? On est rien. On était quoi dedans? On était rien. Quand ça commençait, on était quoi? Parce qu'on savait, on connaissait. Mais aujourd'hui, ça devient comme si c'est notre problème. C'est que c'est pas son nozo. Nous, les militaires, on n'est rien dedans. On combat avec les gens que on ne les connaît même pas. Mais seulement la parole qui peut sortir dans la bouche des gens, ça peut changer ce problème. Sans que nous, les militaires, on utilise les armes à un niveau. On paie nos vies comme on est en train de se perdre comme ça. Mais c'est devenu maintenant, c'est comme si c'est nous, les militaires, qui doivent maintenir la paix. Or, même si on dit qu'on a déployé combien de militaires là-bas au Nozo, je vous dis qu'on ne peut pas maintenir la paix. On ne peut pas. Ce n'est pas notre notre problème. On va tout faire. On a autant fait. On a changé quoi? Ça aggrave. Les gars développent les méthodes chaque jour. Les technologies, ça augmente chaque jour. L'équipe paie, c'est nous. Les gens restent au bureau, ils changent tout. Quand ça arrive, ils n'étaient pas vigilants. Ils avaient abandonné le poste. Ils buvaient le vin. Ils étaient partis chercher les femmes. C'est à nous qu'on dit ça. Ils sont sur le terrain avec nous? Non. Mais tous les mots durs, ça sort. Le poste même, qu'on a attaqué là-bas, à l'extrême nord, nous on a fait le poste après le poste là. Que toute l'inspection est sortie de Mora. Que l'armée a envoyé, on dit le gouvernement. Ils sont arrivés dans notre poste. Eux-mêmes ils ont vu là où nous on était. On sortait dans l'argent, dans notre poche. On payait les villageois, y compris nous-mêmes, pour faire les postes de combat. Durs, on creusait le sol. Parce que c'est nos vies. On avait décidé de faire, tout le monde a cotisé l'argent. Et chaque fois on cotisait l'argent pour faire des postes de combat. Parfois tu es même malade, tu pars, on te dit même qu'il n'y a même pas le paracétamol. Tu es obligé d'aller soit dans un petit village pour chercher les comprimés à boire. Ne bois pas alors. Tu vas faire comment? Tu vas aller chercher. Les officiers qui nous disent que non, on n'a pas besoin de l'arme lourde parce qu'on nous a doté les armes et les 4x4 bois chargés. Donc même si Boko Haram arrive, on peut tenir Boko Haram. C'est ce qu'ils nous disaient le jour-là. Quand on a demandé l'arme lourde, dit que non, vous avez 4x4 bois chargés, vous pouvez tenir Boko Haram. On est combien d'abord dans le poste? Un poste de combat, on n'a pas. Avec trop de menaces, je vous dis vrai, on a cotisé l'argent, chaque fois pour faire des postes et pour renouveler des postes de combat dans nos poches. On a même demandé des postes de combat, ils nous ont dit quoi? On va voir. Mais quand si c'est pour menacer les gens, si c'est pour envoyer les gens en prison, les gens sont forts. En tout cas, les enfants ne sont pas en brousse. Eux-mêmes, nous ne sommes pas en brousse avec eux. Ils ne connaissent même pas comment ça se passe. Tout le monde lit dans les journaux. Ils voient à la télé. Tout le monde maîtrise déjà. Quand ils viennent nous parler, c'est comme si on dormait là-bas, les seulement avec eux. Les seulement que tu pars en tant que militaire, tu peux faire une mission. Un an. En tant que militaire, tu peux faire une mission. Un an. International, tu rentres. Tu es incapable de dire à tes enfants que mes enfants, je suis rentré. Voilà quand même peut-être, je vais m'acheter un terrain. Je vais m'acheter un tour. C'est la mission que je suis parti faire pour un an qui m'a donné ça. On part faire des mois au Nigeria pour l'offensive. Vous rentrez avec quoi? Rien. On vous menace même. Donc vous voyez, nos vies ne nous servent à rien. Si vous voulez mourir, vous n'êtes pas nos enfants. Ça ne les concerne pas. Ça va donc changer comment? Surtout qu'en Afrique, aujourd'hui, on a les leaders qui se disent que non. C'est derrière la guerre qu'on profite. C'est derrière la guerre qu'on s'enrichit. En tout cas, il y a les militaires qui vont mourir sur le terrain. Nous, on gère l'or. Vous voyez un peu ça? On va donc s'en sortir comment? Vous voyez comment la force? Pour avoir même la dotation, une mission internationale, c'est un problème. Il y a les gens pour avoir même une tenue, c'est un problème. C'est normal. Le jour qu'on fait, tu fais un petit truc, tu vois seulement le message. On t'a mis à désertion. On a coupé ton salaire. On a coupé ta prime. Et ainsi de suite. Ils sont où? Au bureau. Ils font tout le travail là. Nous sommes où? En brousse. Quand on passe au nom. Quand on rentre, on perd beaucoup de camarades. On vient toujours la trouver au bureau. Tu rentres même avec quoi? Rien, les mêmes vies. Tu es même à la force, là où tu dis à ta famille, je suis en mission internationale pour un an. Les petits problèmes, tu n'arrives même pas à résoudre. Mais tu es en mission pour un an, en tant que militaire. Est-ce que c'est normal? vraiment, c'est pas la grâce de Dieu que nous on vit. C'est pas la grâce de Dieu. Et on doit beaucoup prier. Quand il y a un petit truc, on a frappé un poste. Les gens n'étaient même pas là. Mais ils vont vous dire comment ils étaient en train de chercher les femmes. Il n'y avait personne au poste. Hein? Ils étaient partis boire le vin. Ils étaient en balade. Quelqu'un qui ne sait même pas au terrain, il vous rencontre ça. Vous voyez? On n'était pas vigilants. Les mots durs. Mais pourquoi ils ne posent pas les questions comme les enfants qui sont là-bas, au poste, pendant un an? Leur morale, c'est quoi? Leur morale, c'est quoi? C'est quel genre de mission qu'un militaire peut faire pendant un an? Pendant un an, tu rentres plus pauvre quand tu étais même parti pendant un an. C'est la honte pour nous. C'est la honte pour nous. Mais, on a déjà signé. Et comme on ne peut pas déposer notre pays, on va s'occuper le travail, mais que tout le monde se protège. Tu ne te protèges pas, tu ne peux pas aussi protéger le camarade. Que Dieu nous protège aussi, parce qu'on compte seulement sur Dieu. C'est le bon Dieu qui nous garde. Ça ne va pas vraiment. Ça ne va pas. Regarde nos zones, on a déjà perdu combien de militaires. On continue à faire. Voilà la force qu'on dit qu'on a créée. Combien de pays? Jusqu'à aujourd'hui, un État au Nigeria que Boko Haram a pris. On est incapable de prendre même un tiers de cet État que Boko Haram a pris. Nous sommes incapables de baisser même la tête de Boko Haram. Mais tu attends un costaud, non? La force multinationale mixte. On profite même quoi derrière ça? Rien. Mais quand on rentre, on paie les camarades. Tu es même malade en plus. Pourquoi on vient te chercher même? C'est un problème. Mais le jour qu'on attend que oui, on a frappé, ils sont morts. Tu vas voir une commission qui vient là-bas. Et la cellule, et la gendarmerie. On entend le chef de force. On fait ceci, cela. Tu es déjà parti, tu es déjà parti. Pourquoi les mêmes gens ne viennent pas aussi au terrain pour voir que non? C'est qu'on vous a donné au poste n'est pas suffisant. Là où vous êtes basé, la situation de là-bas où les conditions ne sont pas bien. Mais c'est quand quelque chose arrive, tu vois les gens avec les vestes, les costauds galons. Oh, les questions. On entend la CENIL, la gendarmerie. À la tout le monde vient d'entendre. Voilà ce que nous voilà ce que nous avons subi. Les camarades sont là-bas à la mort. Chaque jour on fait les hommes. J'ai dit encore que le bon Dieu nous protège et que chacun se protège. Tu te protèges, tu serais aussi capable de protéger ton camarade qui est à côté de vous et qu'on ne perd pas le moral. Je n'ai jamais suivi quelqu'un me demander que voilà votre moral c'est comment. Vous êtes à la force là à la fin, vous êtes même rentré comment? Rien. Ça va même où? On ne sait pas. Qui gère même ça, on ne sait pas. On ne fait que mourir. On meurt pour qui? Pour notre pays. Mais, c'est bizarre. C'est bizarre. On tient seulement fort, les gars. On tient seulement fort. On a déjà signé. On reste toujours militaire. Ça va aller. Ça va venir. Un jour. Dieu va, si la guerre là-bas finit, ok, Dieu va nous aider, ça va finir. Si ça ne va pas finir, ok, on continue à faire la guerre. Mais, pour dire vrai, tout le monde doit mettre dans sa tête que le Cameroun, l'état qu'on traverse maintenant, c'est difficile. Et ça va durer. Et si on ne fait pas attention, ça va augmenter. Mais nous, les militaires, nous sommes rien dedans. Nous sommes rien dedans. On ne peut prendre aucune décision. Parce que si c'est qu'on prend les décisions, ça, soit on va finir nos populations, soit nous-mêmes, on va plus perdre nos vies, ou ça va compliquer les situations.
That was La Republique military giving, crying on their problems they are facing. Then the obvious question is, why are they doing in Southern Cameroon territory? Is Southern Cameroon territory La Republique du Cameroon territory? Of course, the answer is zero. No. It's a forgery to occupy Southern Cameroon territory, impose colonial master governors in Southern Cameroon territory. My question is, do you own the Southern Cameroon territory? The answer is zero. Because if we look back to the United Nations decision, invite the administrative authorities, the government of Southern Cameroon. So in fact, there was a government in Southern Cameroon that was supposed to initiate with the government of La Republique du Cameroon. For somehow, the government of Southern Cameroon disappeared and La Republique became the sole ruler, control every aspect of our citizens. But this is the moment that we have risen and tell La Republique, pull out your colonial administrative authority out of Southern Cameroon and allow the people of Southern Cameroon to initiate their own territory. You have your own territory. We don't invade it, and you get your way out, because the moments ahead is going to be crazy. You are crying, but we haven't started the war yet. We still at the research bed. Of course, you are also analyzing that we get more stronger. We are still on the research process. We haven't even started the war yet. Wait a moment. When we actually start the war, then you're going to see what happens next. This is Comrade Fundon Daniel speaking live here from the great state of Texas, here in the United States, and this broadcast for this evening. I wish you all a happy and good night.